From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell and I am in my hotel in Adelaide ahead of the day-night test between Australia and India's men in the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Cannot wait for that. But big gap between the matches, and I managed to get out fishing, which is a particular favourite little once-a-year hobby of mine. But out onto the Yorke Peninsula, which is about 2 hours' drive out of Adelaide, and caught some lovely King George whiting. Very, very tasty.
I'm Clint Wilden for the ABC in Perth, filling in for Jim Maxwell, where over here we're still getting over the thumping the Aussies copped in the West and ruining the loss of Perth Stadium's formerly perfect winning record for Australia in Test matches.
I wonder who's to blame for that. I'm Charu Sharma for Akashvani. I have just finished with my 50th class reunion at Mayo College in Ajmer, fine institution there. And I've now traveled to another palace fort in the middle of Rajasthan, which incidentally belongs to a friend of mine. He owns and runs it. And I'm here for my niece's wedding. So we're lucky that the drums are not very loud at this point of time, but it's fun and games. And I'm really happy once again to be able to join Stump from quite the middle of desert Rajasthan.
No better party than an Indian wedding. I've been fortunate to experience one. I hope yours is brilliant, Charu. Can't wait to hear the report. Now, later on in the show, we are going to reflect on Melbourne Renegades winning their first ever Women's Big Bash title. There are some good stories from that dressing room. But first of all, yes, I mentioned that long break for the men's test teams of India and Australia after the first test of the Border Gavaskar Trophy finished in a whopping win for India in Perth. Remember, this is a 5-test series for the first time in 32 years. So India now lead 1-0 with the second test being played here in Adelaide this week, a day-nighter. Now, the series is named after Australia's Alan Border and India's Sunil Gavaskar, who's commentating on this series with Jim Maxwell and me for ABC, and was, of course, with Clint as well in Perth. But we want to explore this week just what it is between these two cricket-mad nations that means we get so many epic and memorable matches. Well, we're joined by a writer who's followed this rivalry as it has intensified over the years, and he's captured numerous gruelling duels in his latest book, Indian Summers, Australia versus India, Cricket's Battle of the Titans. Delighted to welcome esteemed cricket journalist and author Gideon Haigh to Stumped. Gideon, great to see you. Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Clint. Thank you, Charu. Well, we say it's a long break, but it's still going to be 5 test matches in 46 days. That's still pretty crowded by old-fashioned.
It picks up pace. Yeah, it picks up pace, fair to say. But go on, how did this particular book come about? What drew you to this particular rivalry?
Well, I'd just done a book on the Ashes, on the rivalry, the sort of the originating international cricket rivalry, and it was quite successful, and the publisher said, "Why don't you do the same for India?" Now, it's a very different rivalry. It's a very recent rivalry. The writing I noticed when I got around to it was it skews to recency. So we actually have whereas with Ashes cricket, we're kind of born into the Ashes tradition. It's always pre-existing. With Australia and India, it's almost like we have watched it develop in real time, in our generation. In the 20th century, Australia and India spread 57 test matches over 54 years. And it was a pretty one-sided competition. It was, I think, 28-11, Australia's way. In the 24 years of the 21st century, they've already played 51 test matches. And Australia is behind. And Australia doesn't often go behind with any other country. India's now won 22 test matches to Australia's 17. And that's, in a sense, that's fundamental to a good rivalry, is the sense that both teams have a chance when they take the field. There's been a reasonable share of success for both teams, but there's a developing theme in which India is ascendant and Australia is struggling to catch up, which kind of reverses Australia's traditional role. So there's lots of narrative threads to it, which I think automatically make it interesting.
Does this rivalry now usurp the Ashes? A lot of people feel that India-Australia is as big, if not bigger, than the Ashes now.
Well, I think financially it's certainly bigger. I mean, it's reflected in the exchequer. In fact, there's really 2 streams of international cricket now. There's the international cricket that involves India and the international cricket that doesn't involve India, and one is worth 10 times what the other is. The minute that India takes the field, 1.3 billion people sit up and pay attention, and that makes a huge demographic, economic, and cultural difference. Now, in a lot of ways, the Ashes is the rivalry by which we measure others, and it has certain associations and appurtenances that the Border Gavaskar Trophy can so far only aspire to. There has been sufficient good cricket, I think, in the last 10 years between Australia and India to make it a legitimate contender for the number one rivalry in global cricket. And that's not just in test matches, of course. It's also been in white ball cricket. And the white ball cricket's been red hot for the last year. Australia won the 50 over World Cup and the T20 World Cup, and then India won the T20 World Cup. And every time they meet on the field, regardless of the genre, regardless of the team's composition, there's a story into which the teams step.
Gideon, great book. I loved it. On the front, this rivalry has got bigger and bigger. The entire cricketing world is watching, is a quote right here from Ravi Shastri. Why do you think people all around the world have been drawn to this particular rivalry?
Two teams that play a fascinating, contrasting cricket. Now they're not two teams that have the same approach, or they're mutating into one another from time to time. They always play. It's almost like an ideological dispute. What kind of cricket best suits the antagonist? So that's kind of fascinating, and that reveals the layers and the complexities of Test cricket. And that makes everyone who's a Test cricket viewer, regardless of their background, want to tune in. They've been at the top of their respective games for the last 10 years. They have been dueling in the top 1, 2, 3 of global cricket. At times, other teams have rivaled them. Certainly, England rather fancy themselves on the Test match field recently, and South Africa is a looming potential contender for the World Test Championship final. But it's interesting. Back in 2001, there was an Indian 24-hour news channel called Aaj Tak. Chiru probably remembers it. And it decided that it would cover the 2001 Border Gavaskar Trophy using the rubric, who will be the world champions? Now, at the time, Australia was the undisputed world champion. They'd won every global trophy. They were supreme on the Test match field. They won 16 consecutive Test matches. And yet India had the nerve to say that if India beat Australia, then they would become world champions. And lo and behold, they did. They did, Chiru. So there's nothing like a big call and a justification for that big call soon after. And that, I think, kind of set the tone for their competition in the 21st century.
Well, Gideon, I don't know if you can hear the drums behind me because India's still celebrating Perth. It was truly magical. wasn't quite so close though. But whenever you talk about rivalries between countries, obviously it's also very much rivalries between certain players. And
yes.
Is there a defining one for you over the years, or a few that really stand out? And of course, there are some right now too.
Warne versus Tendulkar was an amazing contest whenever they played. Marred somewhat by the fact that Tendulkar so consistently had the better of Warne. There probably Warne didn't have sufficient share of success, but there still was something momentous when these two critical players of their generations and sort of symbols of their respective games took the field against one another. I actually think there's quite a nice rivalry and quite a nice story between Dean Jones and Kapil Dev. From their combat in that tied test of 1986, where I think they were they were joint man of the match, I think, in that game, from Jones's remarkable double 100 and Kapil Dev's 100 and leadership for India, and they became long-term friends. Dean was a great ambassador for the relationship between Australia and India. I think he died, of course. He ended up dying in India. I think he told me at one stage that he'd made more than 100 trips to India. He was probably as well known in India as he was in Australia. and he kind of incarnated that kind of gregarious, ebullient, buccaneering, talkative, communicative Australian for a lot of Indian people. He had a natural kind of, in a sense, he was such a great enthusiast for the game that he loved the mutual enthusiasm that he encountered in India. And of course, Virat Kohli against anyone is a fantastic rivalry.
Yep.
It doesn't matter whether he's playing against Mitchell Starc or against Pat Cummins or against Ricky Ponting or anyone. When Virat Kohli is on the field, he just seems to draw all eyes towards him. And I think he attracts a lot of goodwill. I mean, he's one of those players who I think Australians have really warmed to. Australians are kind of fascinated by. Australians are fearful of, slightly fearful, but also fond. I think a lot of people enjoyed his 100 in Perth because they like to see it when a champion emerges from adversity, even when it's at their expense.
Gideon, it's great to have you on Stumped, and you express this rich rivalry just as well in words spoken as you do written. So Gideon's book, Indian Summers, Australia versus India, Cricket's Battle of the Titans. Thank you so much for being on Stumped, and we'll see you at the test.
Thanks, Ellie. See you soon.
Finally on Stumped, Melbourne Renegades ended their Women's Big Bash title drought after beating Brisbane Heat in a rain-affected final at the MCG by a nail-biting 7 runs. West Indies all-rounder Hayley Matthews produced an outstanding display. She made 69 with the bat and took 2 wickets to ensure the Renegades clinched their first title in 10 years of the WBBL. Fair to say that they were underdogs throughout this year's tournament. Clint, it was quite some turnaround because Renegades were rock bottom last season, weren't they?
Well, I'm not sure if I can say this on Stump, but from the outhouse to the penthouse, because they have been down the bottom of the ladder for their entire existence, and one of just the 2 teams before this season that hadn't played in a final. So they made a couple of gutsy decisions with their recruiting. They also had success right across their playing list. So they had 3 of the top 13 bats in the competition. Hayley Matthews, outstanding. Courtney Webb and Georgia Wareham, we know how good she is. And then in the top 10 wicket takers, had 3 in there as well. Sophie Molyneux, who didn't play at all the previous year, their captain. And so she was almost a recruit anyway. Matthews again and Alice Capsey, all in the top 10 wicket takers. So they were really strengthened. They made some big calls and they got them absolutely right, with Matthews sticking around and adding Deandra Dotton, who was really impressive for them as well. And I would say one thing, I love the youngster that they got in, Charis Becker, who got overlooked by the Perth Scorchers. She's a player of the future, and from what we've seen of her, played I think 9 games this season and was terrific, but she's going to get better and better and better.
Name to watch out for. Charu mentioned Hayley Matthews, her standout 69 off 61 balls, and considering Renegades were 64 for 4, her knock was pivotal, wasn't it?
Well, she just, she's got to be one of the finest all-rounders in women's cricket ever, the way she does. Well, maybe that's a bit of a hyperbole, but certainly in these days, because what is it on the field that she can't do? I mean, her runs come very quickly.
Wasn't it?
She's, big and tall. She can bowl really well. She knits the team together. She's such a leader as well, and inspirational figure. So she's got everything going for her. I just hope she can keep her interest and her zest alive, because that's what she or any team she plays for needs, certainly in the West Indies, because if she's there, she can work some magic. I mean, she doesn't need me to offer any other names as such, but I mean, somebody like a Kapil Dev, he always made you believe that you can win the match with the bat or the ball or with a catch or with a run out or something or the other. That's the kind of importance, talismanic importance she has to edge for any team that she plays for. So I'm not surprised at all that she dug them out. And as you say, Clint, came back from almost nowhere. Melbourne's my favorite city, so I think I'm pretty happy with this win.
You're a renegade now.
Yeah,
absolute renegade. There were some great stories, Clint, in the dressing room, weren't there? And if I mention the name of Josie Dooley, I mean, she didn't play a single game during the tournament because she had suffered a serious stroke when she was on holiday earlier in the year, hadn't she? But she was a key part of the group still, wasn't she? They hung her shirt up in the changing room at the MCG, and that really shows just, sometimes it can be about more than the playing and the winning.
Don't tell us, Ali Charu, that at times emotion doesn't play a role, and it shows that teams are about the people that surround them as well as the 11 that go out in the middle. One thing I do know is I can't tell you the message that she wrote on her shirt for her teammates as they ran out because it's a little rough around the edges. But basically it was suggesting that they just could not let this opportunity pass. And they didn't. And while obviously what happened to Josie's terrible news, having the stroke in the holidays, of course, but for her to still be around the team, and I know that everyone spoke about what it meant for her to be about the place and how they would have been, I'm absolutely certain, motivated by trying to get it done for Josie Dawley.
Yeah, what a great mascot she was. Charu, the 10th edition of the WBBL, and there were 6 players from India taking part in it this year. Any who in particular stood out for you for their performances?
Well, for starters, we know that the Women's Big Bash is, well, certainly the first and the biggest tournament for women for very long. You can argue that the IPL now is also a very big tournament, perhaps better off commercially. But I have to admit, I wonder why more Indian players, if they are one of the top 3 teams of the world, if we can allow them that privilege, are not featured in the WBBL. I'd like to see a lot more because that's the kind of exposure that need to perhaps have the same kind of rivalry that we've just talked about earlier in the program, the men with India and Australia. However, I mean, it's quite remarkable how, she's 5'0", she's one of the smallest players around. But, Jemimah Rodrigues does such a terrific job outside of India as well with that favorite sweep of hers, averaging about, 33 or so. She played all the matches. And apart from the runs, which might not be spectacular, I think it's the team spirit. She's a very, very team spirit kind of person. I'm sure every team around the world would love to have her. I'm glad that she did well. Smriti Mandhana came a little late, so we haven't seen the big runs from her. And I would dare suggest that she and Harmanpreet and a few others need to prove themselves a lot more. But with only 6 players out of so many, what's the total there? At least 100. I still wonder why more Indian players can't make the cut and get a WBBL contract. So I hope that happens because they are world beaters in many ways. Some of the spinners are very good. But yeah, Jemimah was probably the standout.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped on Akashvani. Don't forget you can follow us on X. We're at BBCWS Sports. Use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And check us out on YouTube as well. Go to BBC World Service YouTube to watch us. My thanks to Charu Sharma and Clint Wilden and to all of you. Speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.